Hello, humans, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Gamer. Space 1999 is the inspiration for Starfield. Nobody can convince me otherwise. But let me tell you, they ruined it. They ruined it because if you watch this show, specifically the first season, there is no way that you cannot have made a better video game if you just followed the storyline, specifically season one. For those of you who are not familiar, right? Space 1999 is a show back from 1975. It ran through like 78. And, it was a combination. You have American and British actors, produced, financed by Italian TV. And it was a weird combination of these three that actually made the show eccentric, but in a good way. I don't even know how to explain it. I watched this as a young boy, right? And I remember the show specifically because in season 2, they had an alien woman there that that could change into different animals, right? She was a metamorph, it just changed. And guess what? She taught me why Captain Kirk was so excited about that green woman, right? That was that was the very first time I was like, wow, that chick is hot. And she's an alien. I knew I was going to love sci-fi back then. But let me tell you, if you look at the shape of these ships, you could see the DNA, right? That this is the DNA of the Starfield ships. And let me tell you, Starfield would have been a much better game. A much better game if you just followed season 1. That's all you would have to do, right? Season 2 was more disco. They found season 1 to be too serious, but let me tell you, I love the show. I really love the show. Everybody back then, all of us kids were watching this, watching like the $6 Million Man, all these shows, back in the 70s. What a time to be a kid, right? Let me tell you, these people were having fun. Adults were having fun back in the 70s. You guys that are Gen Xers and remember your parents, we knew how much they were getting down, right? You knew how much they were partying. And, the stars of the show were actually Martin Landau, Barbara Bain, famous from Mission Impossible. That's right. The people that did, Mission Impossible did this show, and it's the one that is going bonkers now. That it's made so many billions of dollars with Tom Cruise, right? But getting back to the sauce here, if they would have made Starfield just follow this show, it would have been great. However, there's only one man that could produce this series in this way, and that would be one Hideo Kojima. He would be the only man for the job, I promise you. Because this series, even though it would make a great video game, it would be a great commercial game for the corporations of today, right? It wouldn't be something that Microsoft could ever do, just because of their structure. You would need too much creative freedom in order to bring the series into life through a video game. But man, what a story it would be. This is why I call the show The Outer Realms. I call it The Outer Limits on the first one, but I thought The Outer Realms was a better name because I want to touch upon these subjects that are like just in the periphery of video games, right? Ideas for video games, things that are video games related, things that you're not going to hear videos about. These are eccentric things, I know. Right, but for those of us that are really retro driven, those of us who love yesteryear, we can think of things that, man, would make great video games today when we see the poor quality of the video games that they're putting out today. Some of these storylines are just crap, right? And we just look back in time and we see great writing. Right? There have been so many shows throughout the years that really taught us what it was to enjoy the written word, whether it was on paper, brought to life through a series, right? And we just have a different appetite for content. We love rich stories. We love great characters. We want just deeper meaning in our stories, not just this fluff. Can you imagine? For those of you who know the series, can you imagine if Starfield would have been based on this with the crew? And for those of you who don't know, this whole story for this show is that there's a base on the moon, and the moon gets blown away from the Earth, right? I don't want to spoil it for you for those who are going to go watch the show. But that's the story. And based on that, of course, they find several adventures, right? It's a 1970s take, right? On space travel. Bell bottoms are there. The aesthetics are so different, man. When I told you back in the day that, the wood grain consoles, especially the Amico, that foot bath shape, that's, hopefully this doesn't turn you off, right? Because there was a lot of wood grain to be had back then. But those are the type of aesthetics you would have had back then, right? Like a digital screen on wood would be something that you would see back then. And even the gadgets that they have on the show, they have like many CRTs in their devices, right? Their scanning devices. It's cool, man. If you would bring this to life, it would have character. If you would bring this to life just following those stories, man, what a great video game you would have. Unfortunately, in these times, you can only do it via, an individual, somebody who had the funding, somebody who had the expertise, and the artistic freedom to bring it to life. Because, it's not commercial. This is not a game that you're going to microtransaction to death. This is a game that, if produced right, would give you a rich story, a rich narrative, great adventures, awesome combat. And like I said, this is the DNA of Starfield. Look at those ships. Look at those ships and tell me that those aren't the modules from Starfield. Of course they are. But they couldn't pull the trigger, right? They couldn't do it all the way. Man, what an homage they could have paid for that, to that series, right? Or made. And so many adventures, so many different stories. You wouldn't, the stories are already written. You could just pay homage to some of the episodes, take some of that narrative story. Shoot, Microsoft's so rich they could have bought the entire property if they wanted to. But that is what corporate gaming is now, short-sighted. They would never do something like that. But a game with this kind of style, made well, with a rich story, man, the money they could have made, right? But, it's 2025. All we can do is hope and dream. And for those of you that are from this era, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's why when we look at today's, content, whether it's movies, books, TV, somehow it's not as creative. The people back then made more with less. All right, humans, thank you for joining me on another episode of the Outer Realms. I'm out here in the Philippines. I'm trying to release these every midnight, right? For those of you who are channel members, you're going to get those early, right? And, you can watch them whenever, wherever you're at, in the world. But for those of you in the U.S., I'm going to put them out at midnight Pacific time. So stay tuned for these. Whenever I record them, I'll put them out and you can enjoy them. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. This is something I'm going to be doing. This is a passion project of mine. I wanted to make something that's family friendly yet interesting to me. And hopefully it will be interesting to you. Thank you so much. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.